In this video, I'm going to compare two of the most user-friendly video shooting cameras on the market. We've got the iPhone 17 Pro and the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. I don't know about you, but if a camera is quick and easy to use and you get great results without having to jump through hoops, that's kind of instinctively the camera that I reach for. The thing is, if you have to choose between the iPhone 17 Pro or Pro Max and the DJI Osmo Pocket 3, you're not just choosing between two cameras, you're kind of choosing between two fundamentally different tools. And by the end of this video, you're obviously going to have a much better idea of which one of these cameras is best for you. So I've actually used both of these cameras a lot, and I thought it would be a good idea to give you my honest opinion on how these devices compare, because there's actually some crucial differences that often get overlooked in these comparison videos, especially around what the Pocket 3 actually is as a device. For a start, the Pocket 3 is a gimbal camera. This is a 3-axis motorized gimbal with a 1-inch sensor camera built into it. And the gimbal aspect of the device makes it a very different tool to the iPhone 17 Pro. The iPhone is obviously a phone and it's got 4 cameras, and capturing images is just one of its many capabilities. But we can also grade and edit images on this device if we want to, and that's not really possible on a Pocket 3. Although, of course, you can connect a Pocket 3 to a smartphone and then download the footage and then do your editing there on the smartphone. So, of course, the iPhone also allows messaging, online banking, map navigation, and thousands of other possibilities. Whereas the Pocket 3 is basically a dedicated camera, and there's pros and cons to each. The iPhone 17 Pro has incredible cameras, but it's basically a miniature computer that also happens to shoot video and photos. And that means that every feature, including the cameras, has to compromise to fit into one device that does like a ton of different things. The Pocket 3 takes the opposite approach. It's not trying to be everything. It's basically just designed to be a pocket-sized camera that shoots high-quality video. And it's designed to be as simple as possible for a solo creator. So it's less versatile overall, but that allows the design to be more finely tuned for video creators. For a start, you can use it one-handed. It's only 179 grams and it fits into the palm of your hand. You don't need to fumble about on a screen with your free hand. You can just press the button to start recording. Tap the joystick 3 times or tap the screen to switch from rear to front filming, and that means you're always using the best camera, and framing yourself is easy. With the iPhone, using the selfie camera is inferior to the main lens, but I will say that the iPhone 17 Pro front camera is a big improvement on the previous iPhones, especially as you can now get horizontal video holding the phone vertically. But if you do want to use the main camera, which is obviously the best quality, then framing yourself becomes a bit more of a challenge. You can connect the iPhone to an external monitor, or you can use your Apple Watch, which is what I do quite often. But now you're adding more gear and complexity. With the Pocket 3, you can switch vertical to horizontal just by flipping the screen. Again, all one-handed. With the iPhone 17 Pro, due to the new square sensor, you can also now just press this button to switch between vertical and horizontal, but only if you're using this selfie camera. So you can actually set up the Pocket 3 so that you just flip the screen and it's going to power on the gimbal and immediately start recording. With the iPhone, you've got to unlock the phone, you've got to open the camera app, you've got to tap the record button. Of course, there is the camera control button, so you could just press that to open the camera app, which does make it a little bit easier. And then, of course, you can press it again to start recording. But it is still slightly more complicated than using the Pocket 3. The gimbal aspect of the Osmo Pocket 3 allows you most of the extra shot options that you're going to get with a smartphone and gimbal. So that's things like crane shots, push in and tilt, parallax, and many others. I mean, you can attempt many of these shots just with the smartphone in your hands, but it's just not quite so easy, especially things like the crane shot. But the iPhone does have some design advantages. So first of all, it's actually waterproof, so you don't need to worry if it starts raining, or if you're filming in a situation where water is splashing around, like for example on a boat. The Pocket 3 is not waterproof, so if you want to take it anywhere where it might get wet, then you're going to want to put it in a waterproof housing. Secondly, the iPhone 17 Pro has a telephoto camera that gives you an 8 times zoom at a high quality and up to 40 times in photo mode, although you will get a loss of quality at that range. The Pocket 3 has a maximum zoom of 2 times at 4K resolution. You can actually zoom 4 times, but only at 1080p. Although you can get telephoto adapters to place over the lens, I'd really say that zooming in isn't really what the Pocket 3 is about. If you want something that has a good quality telephoto, go for the iPhone and not the Pocket 3. Another advantage for the iPhone is being able to install all kinds of different camera apps. You've got Blackmagic, which offers a lot of control. It's completely free, as well as offering ProRes RAW, Apple Log 1 and 2, and OpenGate recording. And you've got other apps like Super 16 or Dehancer, which emulate the look of film. There's also the Kino app. And it's just really easy to get this really nice film emulation look. And then of course you've got editing apps, there's grading apps, there's specialist photo apps and so on. The list is endless. As well, the iPhone can also shoot Dolby Vision HDR, which the Pocket 3 cannot. So this versatility means that the iPhone 17 Pro can be kind of different things to different people and different situations. It's always with you. You can just take it out, grab some shots on the fly, just using the basic auto settings of the regular app, or you can use it in a more professional way with an app like Blackmagic or one of the many others that you've got to choose from. And there's just like too many to list. And you can even add cinema lenses and make a $75 million feature film with it. Now, most reviews compare stabilization in normal conditions, but they overlook how stabilization performs in low light. And these cameras do perform very differently in low light, so it is important to compare them. So the iPhone uses a combination of sensor shift, optical image stabilization, as well as digital stabilization. And the thing about digital stabilization is that it relies on fast shutter speeds to work cleanly. And that's the same for all cameras, including action cameras. And actually, if you look under the hood of your iPhone, you'll find a setting that deals with this exact problem. You can choose whether in low light you want better quality video or better quality stabilization. You can't have both. So when you're shooting in low light, you need to slow down your shutter speed to gather more light. But the problem is that slow shutter speed means more motion blur in your footage. But digital stabilization really works best with sharp images. So in low light, you might get sort of warping and artifacts, and sometimes you get this kind of smeary look where parts of the image are shifting around as the camera tries to make it look less shaky. So the Pocket 3 doesn't have this problem. Its stabilization is entirely mechanical, using these 3 independent motors which control pitch, roll, and yaw in real time. Your shutter speed isn't going to affect the way these motors work, and this means that you can shoot in dimly lit conditions and the gimbal stabilization remains rock solid regardless of how much light is available. Slow shutter or fast shutter, it just doesn't matter. In practice, this just means that in low light scenarios, the Pocket 3 stabilization performance doesn't degrade, whereas the iPhone 17 Pro's does. In low light, both cameras handle things pretty well, but differently. But if we take away the stabilization aspect, how do these cameras perform in low light? Well, the iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max have 4 cameras, but they are not all equally as good when it comes to low light situations. Obviously, the best performer is going to be the main camera. The telephoto is pretty good, but the ultra-wide and the selfie cameras are really the weakest in low light. You can see in this comparison that the Pocket 3 creates a cleaner image, but at the expense of image information in the shadows. Whereas the iPhone 17 Pro pushes up the shadows so you can see the bricks behind me, with the Pocket 3, those bricks are almost invisible in deep shadow. But the iPhone image is much noisier. But if you switch the Pocket 3 to low light mode, you get a similar boosted shadows look with lots of extra noise. Compared to the selfie camera of the iPhone 17 Pro, they're both noisy, but the low light mode of the Pocket 3 is sharper than the soft iPhone selfie camera image. Bear in mind, I'm deliberately filming in very difficult conditions here to fully test the cameras. So all in all, I find that the Pocket 3 usually beats the iPhone 17 Pro in low light conditions in terms of image quality and in terms of stabilization. But let's look at image quality in regular lighting conditions. Comparing images from the Pocket 3 to photos and videos taken with the iPhone 17 Pro native camera app, both give you very nice images considering how small the cameras are. Footage from the Pocket 3's 1-inch sensor has a cleaner, more natural appearance. The detail in the image is genuine rather than from heavy sharpening. The camera handles all light situations well, without resorting to artificially boosting the shadows to create a wider dynamic range. The iPhone can produce a wide dynamic range as well, despite the tiny sensors for each camera, but this is achieved using heavier computational processing compared to the Pocket 3. Things like tone mapping. And you might find that the images are a little too sharp for your liking. On the other hand, this extra sharpness is good for sharing on social media and viewing on a phone. The Pocket 3's rendering of skin tones is a bit more accurate, I'd say, but there's not much in it. I now found that with the iPhone 17 Pro, skin tones are a little bit more reliable than previous models, and you now get consistent white balance across the lenses. But when you're using the native camera app, I'd say that it still feels just a little bit like phone footage. And I'd also say that the Pocket 3's color rendering of landscapes, particularly of blues and greens and warm tones, is often more immediately pleasing. So there's one difference between the two devices when it comes to recording video that often gets overlooked, and that's constant frame rate versus variable frame rate. So the Pocket 3 records constant frame rate video. And this means that there's no risk of frame rate interpretation issues or audio sync problems that you sometimes get with variable frame rate, or sometimes you get these kind of frame blending artifacts. iPhones record variable frame rate like all other phones, and most of the time it looks fine. If you play the video in your Photos app, it's going to play smoothly. But there can be issues when you're editing. So you might get stuttering in some editors, or audio drift over long clips, and things like maybe inconsistent speed ramps, or when you're trying to get nice smooth looking slow motion. So you can actually record constant frame rate with the iPhone Pro or Pro Max, but you will need to use the Blackmagic app. All you do is switch reference source to internal, and you're going to get constant frame rate when you're shooting with the app. The iPhone 17 Pro allows 4K at 120 frames per second with all 4 cameras. The Pocket 3 can also shoot 4K at 120 frames per second, but it can only do it in slow motion mode. And that doesn't make too much of a difference, except that you will get 30 frames per second slow motion, whereas the iPhone gives you the option to keep the 120 frames per second, or you can slow it to whichever frame rate suits you. So for example, you might want to slow your 120 frames per second down to 24 frames per second, or 30 frames per second, or 60 frames per second, depending on the video that you're working on. So you've got a little bit more flexibility. Now, one thing is that the Pocket 3 also shoots NTSC frame rates. So that's the 23.97, 29.97, 47.95, and 59.94, which some users might see as essential for professional work, especially if you're based in North America. Now, you can shoot NTSC frame rates with the iPhone, but again, you're going to need to use a third-party app that supports those frame rates, like the good old Blackmagic app. Both the iPhone and the Pocket 3 can shoot 10-bit color video. The difference is the Pocket 3 shoots 10-bit by default, whereas the iPhone shoots 8-bit by default. To get 10-bit on the iPhone, you need to switch to a different format like Dolby Vision or ProRes. The iPhone 17 Pro shoots 10-bit Apple Log versions 1 and 2, as well as various types of ProRes and ProRes RAW, which are genuinely excellent for color grading. And if you do shoot ProRes RAW on the iPhone, you do get genuinely superior color grading flexibility, and that processed kind of phone look is completely gone, really. But that does require an external SSD and extra time, as well as a little bit of extra expertise. The Pocket 3 shoots 10-bit D-Log-M, which is pretty solid for professional color work without the extra complexity. The workflow is a little bit simpler, and I'd say that the results are professional enough, but it's not as good as the Apple Log 1 and 2. I mean, most video creators are not going to be shooting RAW anyway, which is really for high-end video work or for matching footage to other cameras. But for regular video, we might just shoot log, apply a LUT, and then publish. And you can do that with both of these devices. So the Pocket 3 has regular gimbal modes, which allow you to control which of the gimbal motors follow your movement. And this allows you to customize the gimbal depending on the kind of shot that you want to capture. There's also creative features like spin shot, which again, you'd need to use a smartphone gimbal with the iPhone 17 Pro to achieve. The Pocket 3 also has Active Track 6. Double tap on a person or an object and the gimbal automatically starts tracking. The subject then stays centered in the frame as you move the camera or as the subject moves. So this is really great for solo creators. You know, if you're filming yourself walking, just double tap your face, press record and walk. And the gimbal is going to follow you, it will keep you centered and it will maintain the composition while you move. And of course, to do this on a phone, again, you need to mount it to a gimbal. And that means not only do you have to have this extra bulk, but there is some extra time required to kind of get set up and then get filming. With the Pocket 3, you're ready to shoot smooth gimbal shots as soon as you power on. Time-lapse with gimbal motion lets you set a path for the gimbal to move over time, so you can then capture a time-lapse where the camera also moves. The iPhone can do a time-lapse on its own, but not a moving time-lapse. Again, you can just mount it to a gimbal to achieve that shot. Both devices have inbuilt microphones, but I do think that the iPhone 17 Pros are a little bit better. Well, it is a telephone after all. But they do both allow you to connect external mics via USB-C or via Bluetooth. But I actually think this is one of the iPhone's weaknesses. Because when you connect an external mic to the iPhone, there's no notification and there's no kind of like icon just to let you know. I mean, literally, it just does nothing, which to me, I just think that's absolutely crazy. When you think of all the stuff that's been added to an iPhone over the years, you know, how easy would it be just to add a little icon in the corner of the camera app to indicate that an external mic is now connected? So that means that when you attach a mic to an iPhone, there's no real way of knowing that it's recording audio with that mic until after you've finished recording and then you play back the video, which is obviously not ideal. Again, if you use a third-party app like Blackmagic, you can now check to see which mic is actually being used. And you can also see a little audio levels thing, so you can use that to test if the mic that you've connected is actually being used. The Pocket 3 allows you to connect up to 2 DJI Bluetooth mics simultaneously, and the compatible mics are the DJI Mic 2, Mic 3, as well as the Mic Mini. To connect one of these mics, all you have to do is press the power button on the transmitter, and after it powers on, it should automatically connect to the Pocket 3, and you're going to get a notification. Yes, folks, an actual notification. Apparently, it's actually possible. Apple, please take note. As well, you should see a green audio level across the top of the screen, and if you make a noise, you're going to see this moving. So again, this is something that you won't get in the iPhone unless you use a third-party app. Why? Nobody will ever tell us. Apple maybe has some mysterious reason, who knows. Okay, so who should choose which? I'd say choose the iPhone 17 Pro or Pro Max if you're more focused on photography than video. With the iPhone, you do get more flexibility and adaptability. You can shoot Dolby Vision. You can also use the cinematic mode, which the Pocket 3 doesn't have. And the log is an ACES log, so that's like an industry standard log. And of course, we've got the ProRes RAW, and being able to install like a full array of third-party apps really does make the iPhone more than just a camera. And of course, there's a whole bunch of accessories that you can get for the iPhone. You know, tripods, filters, lenses, grips, rigs. The list is pretty endless. There's absolute ton of stuff out there. There are accessories for the Pocket 3, but it's a lot more limited. So choose the Pocket 3 if you're a creator whose main focus is on shooting video, and if you shoot solo and you just want a camera that's simple to set up and produces footage that, it just looks immediately great. So I'm actually using it right now. I've been using it for all these walking and talking shots with the DJI Mic 2 here. connected via Bluetooth, so you can get a good idea of what it actually sounds like. And it is just quick. You can just grab it, flip the screen, and you're off. So if you do like walk and talk content, like travel videos, any of those kind of vlogs, then this is like probably one of the best cameras. It's tracking me now, it's keeping me in the frame, and it's smooth. You know, I've got this gimbal, so there's not going to be any wobbly handshake. So if you do want to learn more about shooting video with your mobile cameras, your little action cameras, or your smartphone, then I've got books. I've actually got 3 books now on Amazon, and I've got courses on Patreon, so that will take you from very basic sort of understanding of shooting video to a full course that will show you how to shoot full sequences that engage your audience, because it's all very well having nice video, but how do you actually engage your audience? And there's basically some simple tricks and simple ideas to look at how to add storytelling elements to your videos. So check that out over on Patreon. Other than that, that's it from me, and I'll see you in the next video that I see you in.